Hi, everyone. Welcome to the February Private Market Resources and Economic Outlook from ACEC. Please like and subscribe to this channel so that you can receive all of the updates in the future. I'm Erin McLaughlin, ACEC's Vice President of Private Market Resources. Like with other months, we're going to start looking at what has most recently come out, which is the December 2021 construction put in place numbers from the Census Bureau. And as many of you know, the construction put in place also includes design spending. So looking at what happened in December, this past December versus December of 2020, we can see that total design and construction spending was up 9%, with residential up 15%, private non-residential up about 9%, in public down about 3%. Now, because we are finishing the year, unlike some other months, we have an entire year's worth of data to look at. So this is our first opportunity to take a look at how 2021 did when we do a year-over-year comparison of 2020. So we can see, which is very good since 2020 was a pandemic recession year, that we were up just over 8% in total design and construction spending. And that, as we've discussed on our previous, meetings here, residential really is what carried that. Residential was up 23% year over year. And that is with 2020 being a greater year than 2019. So that is not the result of a dip, and then a comeback. That is something that has just been, that residential market has just been growing consistently over the past few years. Now, private non-residential was down just over 2%, 2021 versus 2020, with public down over 4%. Now that's very interesting, and we certainly think that might change with the passage of the infrastructure bill. So what I did was to break out what I'm calling the top 5 hottest versus nottest or coolest markets in 2021 when we compare to 2020. So, as we discussed, when we look at the top 5 hottest markets, residential far and away, and it's a huge market, is sort of carrying the day at just over 23%. Now, manufacturing comes in at a very, very strong 8.5%. And, this is really attributed to a couple different factors. We all have heard about our supply chain shortages, our chip shortages, and also, the policy decisions that the Biden administration and, the Trump administration before that have really done to push domestic manufacturing. So, that is resulting in capital spending in the design and construction sector. And then following the hottest 3 markets on the bottom are sewage and waste disposal. That's what the census calls it. We usually call it water, wastewater. Commercial, which includes warehouses, which is the hottest sort of private commercial building sector. And then lastly, healthcare at 1.6%. Now, when we look at the 5 markets that are the coolest, public safety, and some of these cold markets are very small markets when you look at total design and construction spending. But public safety, which is a fairly small market, which includes prisons and correctional facilities, is down 33% year over year. And it was also down in 2020. Following that is lodging. It's no surprise that, hotel companies have decided not to design and build new projects and probably to put a lot of projects on hold, because of the lack of business travel and the lack of travel due to the pandemic. And then following that is conservation and development. And again, that's a census term, but what conservation and development basically refers to are levees, dams, and sort of floodplain related design and construction projects. And that's followed by religious and educational market sectors. Now, aside from maybe conservation and development, what do all of these market sectors have in common? Social distancing is almost impossible in these market sectors. These are buildings and facilities where folks gather. And so, that just continues that trend that we're seeing in that, human behavior and the pandemic have really changed our market forces with design and construction. Now, on this slide, this is a slide that many of you have seen me share before. This just shows sort of the trend line going back the last 7 years. And you can see, the total size of the design and construction spending market, and then private, and then public underneath it. Public is smaller, and it's generally flatter and more consistent compared to private, which includes residential. That may change as we see some infrastructure spending start to happen as a result of the passage of the recent bill. Now, the next slide you'll see, we look to our friends at FMI for what they are forecasting, and just going out 1 year in 2022, what will be the top 5 strongest growth markets. Now, manufacturing comes in at the top at 12%. And, I think that's really key. And again, this is to help, continue abatement of the supply chain shortage, as well as bring in some domestic manufacturing of chips and other components that we really, really need during this time. And then following that is sewage and waste disposal, highway and street, water supply, and conservation and development, aka levees and dams. So, in looking at what these growth markets have in common, and you'll notice residential is not on the list, what I really see is that these are the kinds of projects that are funded through the infrastructure bill. And so that's really, really important. And then, of course, when you're doing all this kind of residential development, you need certain markets to follow. And, we see highway and street, secondary roadways, of course, and then water, wastewater projects also booming as a result of that private residential growth. Now, the other data point that I wanted to share with you all today comes from NABE, which is NABE, the National Association for Business Economics, which many of you know that ACEC participates in, and we use to track some of our larger macroeconomic trends. So in their regular business conditions survey, the most recent one was just released. This is a quarterly survey this past late January. It's really interesting to see how wages has really been impacting the economy. So, for the first time in the survey's 40-year history, more than 2/3 of respondents, and these respondents represent all different industries, report that wages at their firms rose in the previous 3 months. And this is the third consecutive survey where no one has reported falling wages. So, I sort of indicated by arrow our sector, which is services, but and then what some of their other nomenclature means with regards to other sectors. But really what this means is that we, obviously in our industry, we are selling people. And so when wages go up, and wages go up dramatically, the cost of us doing our work goes up dramatically. And as we all know, engineering and architecture services operate at a pretty slim profit margin. So, we have heard from you all that this is a very big concern. And so this is something that we're just tracking some data points on. And then also from the same survey, they asked their panel, which includes economists and forecasters and analysts from all different industries, all different associations in Wall Street as well. Is your firm or the companies that make up your association passing on cost increases to customers? AKA, are you raising your prices? And I think it was very interesting to see that, the majority said yes, nearly all of the time or some of the time. And when you look at the services sector, 51% said yes some of the time, and 22% said, yes, nearly all of the time. So, I think that that's a very interesting, and, for many of our member firms and for companies operating in the architecture and engineering space, raising prices, especially for multi-year contracts and multi-year projects, can be difficult. But obviously, that is a trend that I think we will see even down to our industry level as well. And so just to finish up this month's update, I want to remind you all that you can go much deeper if you check out our dedicated website on acec.org, where we have our publications, our information on our upcoming symposiums, as well as issues of our private side column in Engineering Inc. magazine, and links to our podcast. And our private market symposiums is a new program that we started just this past December, and we are touring the country, hearing from national clients and thought leaders on our 4 key markets and how they are growing nationwide. So our next stop is just a few weeks away in sunny Scottsdale, Arizona on March 3rd and 4th. I encourage you all to visit our website and check that out. Consider registering or passing along to one of your colleagues who works in the commercial and residential space. After that, at the end of April, we will be visiting Boston, actually Kendall Square in Cambridge, to talk about healthcare and science and technology. And with that, I'm Erin McLaughlin with ACEC, and happy to hear any feedback you all have. Have a great day.